The boardwalk hummed with the tired, sticky sweetness of a day's end. For 5 years, Caleb had spun sugar into fleeting sculptures, and this was the first time anyone had tried to buy one on CR. $5. The young man before him insisted he would return by nightfall, his voice earnest, his eyes wide with a desperate sort of sincerity. Caleb just waved a hand, dismissing the notion. He told himself it was a simple act of charity for the day. But as the evening deepened and the hour grew late, sleep eluding him, he had yet to see the young man again. With a sigh, he moved to douse the lamp. That's when the knock came, a soft but insistent rapping against his yon door. He opened it to a rush of warm, fragrant air, and a pliant, heated body stumbled into his arms. The debt, a hushed voice whispered, was here to be repaid. Earlier, the sound of footsteps had paused at his stall. Caleb didn't look up from the delicate crane he was shaping from molten sugar. He asked what kind of design the customer wanted. Silence was his only answer. Once the sculpture was complete, he finally raised his head. A breathtakingly handsome young man, clad in clothes that were little more than worn-out fabric, stood transfixed, his gaze lost on the glassy bird. Caleb offered a gentle smile, inquiring if he was fond of that particular piece. The young man nodded, his voice a low melody as he asked its price. Caleb held up 5 fingers, a simple $5 charge. He was already preparing to wrap it when the young man shook his head, confessing he had no money on him and wondered if CR was a possibility. It was a first. $5 was hardly a fortune, yet here was a request for a loan. The young man, sensing his hesitation, grew anxious, promising to pay it back that very night if Caleb would only trust him with his address. By all rights, Caleb should have refused, explaining that his was a small cash business. But the way the young man's brow furrowed in distress made the words catch in his throat. Instead, he found himself agreeing, telling him to just take it. On an impulse he couldn't explain, he even gave the young man the address to his small house set back from the tourist-choked shore. The young man's face lit up, his smile transforming his weary features. He introduced himself as Julian. Caleb, turning away slightly, gave his own name in return. With a final, radiant look, Julian disappeared into the evening crowd. But night fell completely, and Caleb was ready for bed, the $5 still unpaid. He resigned himself to the loss, chalking it up to a misjudged act of kindness. He sighed, reaching for the lamp switch when the knock echoed through his small yard. After a moment of indecision, he grabbed the heavy pry bar he kept by the door and went to see who it was. The moment the door opened, before he could even process what was happening, a cloying, sweet scent filled his nostrils. A soft, warm body collided with his, and the pry bar clattered from his grip, landing harmlessly on the thin cloth of the person's shirt. His eyes widened as he looked down at the barely clothed figure in his embrace. Julian's voice was a breath against his skin, confirming he was there to settle his account. Caleb reacted with a jolt of alarm, scrambling back into his house and bolting the door. But Julian was persistent, his body thudding against the wood. He called out Caleb's name, threatening to sleep on his doorstep if he wasn't let in. Caleb cursed under his breath, striking his own thigh in frustration. In this chilly coastal air, the young man would catch his death, and Caleb would likely get blamed for it, saddled with a medical bill far exceeding $5. This wasn't a repayment, it was a shakedown. He yelled through the door that the sugar sculpture was a gift and begged Julian to leave him alone. Silence descended on the other side of the door. After a long moment, Caleb cautiously cracked it open. The yard was empty. He figured Julian must have left. Relieved, He opened the door wider to retrieve his pry bar. In that instant, a shadow burst from the side, tackling him to the ground. A sweet, sticky sensation met his lips. It tasted exactly like his own spun sugar. His lips parted in surprise, and a small, bitter object was slipped into his mouth and forced down his throat. He coughed violently, shoving the figure off him, trying to spit out whatever he'd been made to swallow. He demanded to know what he'd been given. Julian was now straddling him, his breathing growing heavy as Caleb's own began to quicken. Julian's voice was a whisper, a hypnotic suggestion that he just let him repay his debt. Caleb's consciousness started to fray at the edges, Julian's soft words weaving through his mind, pulling him under. A sharp gasp tore him from sleep. He bolted upright, his mind a chaotic fog. He frantically checked his hands and limbs, relieved to find them unchanged. The dream had felt terrifyingly real, so vivid that his head still swam in confusion. He tried to stand, but a profound exhaustion and the tangled state of his sheets sent him collapsing back onto the mattress. It hadn't been a dream. It had happened. He threw on a robe and searched the small house. He was alone. The yard was just as it always was, quiet and still. He walked to the gate. The worn-out shirt that had fallen from Julian's body was gone. What had happened last night with Julian? It was real. He must have gone back. But back where? Caleb felt a pang of confusion. A person with no money for a $5 treat. Did he even have a place to live? He wanted to find Julian to demand answers, but for 3 days, there was no sign of him. On the 4th day, just after selling a sugar sculpture, Caleb saw him. Julian was emerging from a rundown motel down a neglected side street. He was wearing the same frayed clothes, now deeply creased. Caleb started to move toward him, but froze. A burly man stepped out of the same motel and wrapped a possessive arm around Julian's waist. Julian turned, a brittle, practiced smile on his face, and allowed the man to lead him back inside the dim building. So that was it. That was how Julian survived. Anyone could have him. For the rest of the day, Caleb's eyes were fixed on that motel, but no one else emerged. When he packed up his stall, he made a point to walk past it. The alley was empty, silent. That night, sleep was a battle. The next day, he forced himself to set up his stall, but the image of Julian's face was burned into his mind. He couldn't understand why he was so obsessed with him. He decided he must be coming down with something, a fever of the mind. He was rubbing his tired eyes when he heard the familiar soft footsteps. A request for a sugar sculpture, a crane. His whole body went rigid. He looked up slowly. Julian stood there, his cheeks flushed with color, a playful smirk on his lips. Caleb managed a tight smile and asked if this one would be on CR2. Julian laughed, pulling out a crumpled bill. He said his price was much more than $5. Caleb knew exactly what he meant, but he didn't want to think about it. He shook his head and handed the sculpture over, telling Julian it was on the house. Julian's expression flickered with surprise. He took the sugar crane like a precious jewel but didn't eat it. He just stood by the stall, silently watching Caleb work. Only when a group of children ran up did he quietly slip away, gone before Caleb could even watch him leave. That evening, the knock came again. Julian's voice came through the door, Caleb not to lock him out this time. Once inside, Julian's arms wrapped tightly around his neck. He gave Caleb a mock glare and declared that if Caleb didn't let him stay the night, he'd just go find someone else. This time, there was no drug, no waking nightmare. When morning came, the space beside him in the bed was still warm, but empty. Days turned into a week, and Caleb didn't see Julian again. He found himself missing the strange, troubled young man, a thought he immediately tried to squash. He was taking advantage of a desperate situation. His parents, were they still alive, would have been ashamed of his lack of moral fiber. Yet, his curiosity and concern for Julian grew stronger each day. It had been 5 days. No Julian. As he was closing up his stall at dusk, a few kids came by for a last-minute treat. He was concentrating on their orders when a loud argument erupted from the community clinic down the block. A woman's voice shrieked for that shameless creature to get out of her clinic. Caleb's hand faltered, nearly ruining the design. The woman yelled about disease and filth, telling Julian to get lost and not contaminate the place. Peering over, Caleb saw a middle-aged woman shoving Julian, tearing at his thin shirt and pushing him to the ground. He quickly finished the kids' orders, handing them over. But as he started to move towards the scene, one of the children tugged on his shirt, complaining that the eye on his sugar animal was lopsided. He tried to give the boy his money back, but the child just stared at him with wide, pleading eyes. Caleb glanced back towards the clinic. The woman was being ushered inside by the clinic director. Julian was slowly, painfully, getting to his feet. Caleb took a deep breath and forced himself to remake the child's candy. The boy, satisfied, skipped away. But when Caleb looked again, the space in front of the clinic was empty. Julian was gone. He searched the immediate area, but there was no trace of him. A heavy weight settled in Caleb's chest, making it hard to breathe. He packed up his cart, and on his way home, he passed the clinic again, still drawn by a desperate hope. He could hear the same woman's voice inside, still spewing vitriol. He flinched and quickened his pace, almost running until the hateful sounds faded behind him. He set down his heavy cart to catch his breath. A soft sobbing sound reached him. He realized he'd wandered into the older part of town, near the wharf. He picked up his cart and followed the sound. It was Sarah, whose small diner was a local institution. Her countertop was overturned, and fresh pastries were smashed and smeared across the dirty floor. She explained through tears that a man had come in, offering to buy all her remaining stock. But after she'd boxed it all up, he refused to pay, complaining about the quality and freshness. He'd gotten aggressive, grabbing at her. She'd resisted, and he had trashed her diner. But then, she said, a young man had saved her. He had calmly talked the aggressive man down, de-escalated the situation. Caleb felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He asked for a description. Sarah said the young man was thin, very good-looking, but wore old, torn clothes. Her words confirmed his worst fear. Then she added that the young man had left with the aggressor. She grabbed Caleb's sleeve, her eyes wide with worry, asking if he thought the young man would be okay. Caleb struggled to keep his voice steady as he asked which way they had gone. Fear, rage, and a sickening helplessness churned inside him as he raced towards the abandoned cannery district by the river. His legs trembled. It was the same darkness, the same predatory world that had taken everything from him 15 years ago. He reached the derelict waterfront, scanning the desolate area. Nothing. He was about to start searching the crumbling buildings when a cry echoed from a nearby warehouse. It was a sound of pain that hit him like a physical blow, the same shattered sound from that first night. A man's slurred voice followed, yelling at someone to stop crying, accusing them of leading him on. The sharp crack of a slap echoed, followed by a stream of vile curses. Caleb felt sick. He grabbed his heavy pry bar and a handful of loose gravel from the ground. He crept to the side of the warehouse, took a deep breath, and hurled the pry bar against a large metal loading door, crashed with an explosive bang. He then threw the gravel against the corrugated metal walls, creating a shower of percussive noise, while yelling at the top of his lungs about a collapse and calling for help. Inside, the grunting and cursing stopped abruptly. He heard shuffling, the rustle of clothing. A moment later, a man stumbled out of a side door, zipping his pants and looking around wildly before scurrying off into the darkness. A heavy silence followed. Caleb waited, his heart pounding. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows, stumbling towards him. A wave of heat radiated from the trembling body. Julian. His face was swollen, marked with a fresh, red handprint. His clothes were shredded. An inhuman rage filled Caleb. He scooped Julian into his arms and, ignoring the pain in his own strained muscles, carried him home. Julian's body was feverish, burning hot to the touch. While Caleb was trying to clean his wounds, he slowly regained consciousness. He flailed, splashing water everywhere, whimpering for them to stay away. He was trapped in the memory, his body contorting as if bound by invisible chains. Caleb gently restrained him, speaking softly, telling him it was just him, the man who makes the sugar sculptures. Recognition slowly dawned in Julian's eyes. Through the steam rising from the hot water, his gaze was startlingly clear. He whispered Caleb's name, his voice trembling. The confident, playful demeanor he sometimes affected was completely gone, replaced by a raw, fragile vulnerability. Caleb assured him he was safe. He told him it was okay to cry out if it hurt as he cleaned the cuts, but Julian remained silent through the entire process. Once in bed, he fell immediately into an exhausted sleep. Caleb went back to the warehouse to retrieve his cart, then stopped at an all-night pharmacy for supplies. By the time he returned, Julian was awake. In the warm glow of a single lamp, his face was flushed with fever, but his lips were pale. Caleb told him to stay in bed, mentioning that his own spare clothes were old and needed mending. He tucked the blankets around Julian and said he was going to make some soup and that he would have to take some medicine afterward. As Caleb turned to leave, a hand shot out and grabbed the corner of his shirt. He looked back. Julian's eyes were red-rimmed and swimming with unshed tears. Caleb's voice softened as he explained he was just going to the kitchen and would be right back. He leaned down and pressed a light kiss to Julian's forehead. It was burning hot. He added a little honey to the broth. Julian took a small sip and licked his lips, murmuring that it was sweet. Caleb explained that his throat sounded raw. He blew on the next spoonful before offering it. The tears in Julian's eyes hadn't fallen, and they now glistened at the corners, making his eyes shine like stars. He managed a small smile, and it was like two constellations spilling into the room. As he grimaced his way through the bitter medicine, he asked how much it had cost. Caleb sighed internally, telling him not to worry about it, that he could just owe him. But as soon as the bowl was empty, Julian's arms were around his waist, whispering that he could pay him back right now. A humorless laugh escaped Caleb. He told Julian he wasn't that kind of monster. He pushed him gently back into the bed and told him to get some real sleep. In the middle of the night, Caleb was woken by a creeping heat. Something hot and restless was moving against him, accompanied by strained, painful-sounding breaths. He knew what was happening, and he knew that if he woke up and stopped it, it would only make things worse, shame Julian further. So he forced himself to feign sleep, enduring the torturous night. When he woke in the morning, Julian was lying quietly beside him. He felt his forehead. The fever had lessened. He made breakfast and went out alone to his stall. His mind was elsewhere, his hands unsteady, and he nearly ruined several sculptures. This couldn't continue. He made his last sale, bought more medicine, and hurried home. The cost of everything was adding up. When he arrived, Julian was standing at the gate, wearing Caleb's old, patched-up clothes. For some reason, seeing him there, waiting, filled Caleb not just with relief, but with a startling surge of joy. After Julian finished that day's dose of medicine, he watched Caleb for a long time before speaking. He said quietly that he was feeling much better. Caleb agreed that he seemed to be. A tense silence followed. Then Caleb spoke, suggesting that Julian could help him with work to pay off his debt. Julian asked what kind of work. Caleb picked up a wooden skewer from the table and said he could help by sharpening sticks for the sugar sculptures. No, the refusal was flat and immediate. Caleb was taken aback. "I'm not sharpening your damn sticks." Julian slapped the skewer from his hand. "I'm lazy and useless. I'm trash. A whore." He curled into himself, his voice a low, self-loathing mumble. He accused Caleb of being like all the other self-righteous people, offering fake pity. He said they all just wanted his body, so why pretend otherwise? He choked out that he was sold to a trafficker at 7 and forced to start seeing clients at 14. The only things he knew, he confessed, were how to posture, how to move his body, how to sound pleased to get men what they wanted. That captivating gaze was now filled with nothing but desolation. He said they only taught him filthy tricks because he was just a filthy, broken thing. He was speaking quietly, then suddenly he lunged, grabbing Caleb's shirt and pulling him close. His face was a mess of tears and mucus. He sobbed that the name they gave him, Julian, was a mockery of the word jewel, something to be bought and sold. Then, through his tears, he laughed a broken, ugly laugh. He told Caleb not to try to be a savior. It was pointless. Caleb pulled him into a fierce embrace, his arms a tight band around Julian's thin frame. He told him he needed to correct him on one point. He wasn't looking down from on high. He was just a man who sold candy on the boardwalk. They were both just standing on the ground. It was Julian who was looking up from a place so low that everyone seemed like they were towering over him. Julian's body went still. Caleb continued, his voice low and intense, acknowledging that the world creates hierarchies, but that everyone starts on the same earth. He said that powerful people push others into the dirt, but the world itself is made of that same dirt. He told him that even manure, when tilled into the soil, helps grow the sweetest fruit. So what if you're as low as dirt? All that matters is that you don't see yourself that way. Julian stared at him, stunned. Then a real laugh, watery but genuine, escaped him. He sniffled, wiping his nose, and said it was a ridiculous way to comfort someone. Caleb shrugged, admitting he wasn't well read. It was the best he could do. A soft, warm pressure met his lips, sweet like his candy. After his emotional release, Julian's spirits seemed to lift. Caleb hoped for a peaceful night's sleep. He was wrong. The oppressive heat, the desperate, programmed need, returned. He knew this couldn't go on. He reached out in the darkness and grabbed Julian's arm. In the dim light, Julian's eyes were hazy, lost. Caleb chose his words carefully, asking if he was insatiable. A blush crept up Julian's face. He curled into Caleb's side and explained in a choked voice that when he was young, he tried to run away so many times, had been so disobedient that his captors had put him on a cocktail of drugs to make him compliant, to condition him into what he was now. His voice broke at the end. Caleb's heart ached. He asked if there was a cure. Julian shook his head, saying he didn't know. He'd never had the money for a real doctor. He whispered that even if there was, it would take a long time. For now, this was the only way he knew to manage it, the cheapest and fastest relief. He murmured Caleb's name, his voice soft and pleading. The next morning, Caleb was late getting up. At breakfast, he suggested Julian come work the stall with him. Julian's eyes lit up for a second before dimming. He said that if he was seen with Caleb, it would ruin his business. Caleb started to argue, but stopped. Julian was right. After the scene at the clinic, everyone in their small town would have a fixed, ugly idea of him. Caleb wanted to say he didn't care about gossip, but reality was harsh. He was now supporting 2 people and paying for medicine. He couldn't afford to lose customers. He stood up, his gaze firm. He proposed that Julian could stay home and sharpen the skewers instead, while teaching Julian how to shave the ends of the skewers to a point. Julian asked why he used a big utility knife for such a small task, wondering why he didn't use a smaller blade. Caleb paused. He mumbled it was just a habit, that he was used to the weight of it. Julian teased him, saying normal people don't hang a utility knife on the wall like a decoration. Caleb just smiled and said maybe he wasn't normal. His mood must have improved, because the sculptures he made that day were particularly beautiful. On his way home, he bought some fresh taffy. As he approached his house, he saw a woman waiting at his gate. It was Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood busybody. She greeted him with a wide, beaming smile, announcing she had wonderful news for him. Caleb's heart sank. She was the unofficial town matchmaker. She gushed that a very nice girl from her church had taken a liking to him. Caleb quickly tried to decline, thanking her for her trouble but stating he wasn't interested in marrying. Mrs. Gable swatted his arm, annoyed, complaining that he hadn't even let her say who it was. Her voice was loud enough to carry into the house. She insisted on coming inside to discuss the details, ignoring his protests. The front door swung open with a bang. Julian stood there, leaning against the doorframe, his shirt hanging open, an air of languid possession about him. He asked who the guest was. Mrs. Gable eyed him up and down, her expression tightening. Caleb moved to Julian's side, pulling his shirt closed, asking him what he was doing. Julian shot him a cool glance, then draped an arm around Caleb's neck and kissed him soundly, right in front of the shocked woman. He then addressed Mrs. Gable directly, his voice dripping with ice, informing her that Caleb was already taken and she should leave. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She finally sputtered something about the decline of decency and hurried away, muttering to herself. Once she was gone, Julian let go. Caleb sighed, shaking his head, asking why he had to do that. Offending Mrs. Gable was a surefire way to have his name dragged through the mud all over town. Julian raised an eyebrow. He asked if Caleb's desire to keep him around wasn't because he already had feelings for him. Caleb retorted without thinking that it could also be because Julian still owed him $5. The light in Julian's eyes died. He spun around and stalked out of the house, yelling that he'd go sell himself to the first person he met to get the money back. Caleb rushed after him, grabbing him in a tight hug, apologizing profusely. He admitted he was wrong, that he wanted Julian to stay because he cared about him. Julian's anger dissolved into tears. He asked, his voice thick, if Caleb couldn't stand the thought of him being with anyone else. Caleb's response was quiet but firm. He said he couldn't stand seeing Julian so debased. He said that some burdens were too heavy for one person to carry. There was a long silence. Then Julian gave a small, wet laugh. He said that was a complicated way of saying Caleb was jealous and his heart ached for him. He stood on his toes and kissed him. Caleb held him tighter. He admitted it was true. He cared for him and it hurt to see him suffer. Julian pushed him back towards the house. That night, he said Caleb had better prove it. Lying in the moonlight, Julian toyed with the old Bowie knife Caleb had given him for protection. The polished blade gleamed. He traced the single letter F etched into the handle, then pointed out that the same initial was subtly embroidered on the corner of Caleb's oldest work jacket. He asked what the connection was. Caleb said there was none, that it was just a brand that sold both jackets and knives. Julian scoffed at the ridiculous lie and pulled him into an embrace. The next day at the stall, Mrs. Gable returned, armed with a bag of sunflower seeds and relentless persistence. She continued to praise the virtues of her niece. Caleb finally interrupted her, handing her a freshly made sugar sculpture. He told her quietly that she saw the situation yesterday. His heart was already spoken for, and it wouldn't be fair to the young woman to marry him. Mrs. Gable studied him for a long moment, then sighed in defeat. But as she left, she issued a grim, quoting an old saying that performers are faithless and prostitutes are heartless. She told him to be careful with the life he had. Heartless and faithless. Caleb shook his head. If that were true, why did society work so hard to crush them, to force them into self-loathing? It was only because they knew, deep down, that there was still a flicker of pride and humanity left to extinguish. When he got home that night, the house was dark. Julian was gone. Panic seized him. He was about to run out to search when the gate creaked open. Julian limped into the yard, clutching his side. Caleb rushed to help him onto the couch. Julian was groaning in pain, but he pulled a small pouch of coins from his pocket, a pained smile on his face. He'd earned some money. Caleb lifted his shirt. His knees were badly bruised and his ankle was swollen. He asked where Julian had been working. At the docks, Julian said, his voice weak, lifting crates. "Are you insane?" Caleb's voice was sharper than he intended. He told him his body hadn't recovered enough for heavy labor. Julian grimaced, admitting that was probably why he'd fallen and twisted his back. An exasperated laugh escaped Caleb. Julian continued to ramble about how hard the work was, how he didn't know how long he could last. Caleb gently massaged his back, telling him to find different work. Otherwise, he'd spend more on doctor's bills than he earned. He found some muscle rub, but as he went to apply it, Julian hooked a foot around his leg and pulled him down onto the couch beside him. He lay there, letting Caleb tend to his injuries. Caleb noted that Julian's fingers were long and slender, well suited for fine work, like sewing or embroidery. Julian dismissed it as too hard on the eyes, his fingers tracing patterns on Caleb's chest. He joked that Caleb would discard him once he went blind. Caleb kissed his forehead, telling him not to talk like that. He suggested Julian could try learning the art of sugar sculpting. Julian was quiet for a moment, then said they could talk about it later. Right now, he would just be a burden. Caleb told him firmly he was not a burden. Julian propped himself up, his expression serious. He asked if the matchmaker had come back that day. Caleb nodded. He told Julian he'd made it clear he wanted to spend his life with him. Julian's eyes softened, but he pressed on, reminding Caleb he couldn't give him children, that his reputation would ruin Caleb's, that he would face a lifetime of whispers and judgment. He asked if Caleb could really live with that. Caleb pulled him close, covering them both with a blanket. He was young. Legacy could wait. He said the whispers didn't scare him. What he wanted was a life where Julian could stand by his side openly, without being hurt by those whispers. He acknowledged the world was full of prejudice, but said that with persistence, even mountains can be moved. He told him that one day, those prejudices would blow away like dust. Julian's eyes filled with tears. He rested his head on Caleb's chest and mumbled, asking how anyone could be as good as him. Caleb stroked his back. "Because you're good too," he said. "That's why we found each other." Julian tried several jobs. The rumors followed him, more vicious each time, and nothing lasted. But he didn't give up. Every evening after closing his stall, Caleb would walk the town, asking at every shop and business if they had work for a willing pair of hands. He heard the gossip, the cruel speculation. One evening, he was feeling disheartened when he heard a sharp voice cut through the street noise. It was Sarah from the diner. She was standing outside her shop, brandishing a rolling pin at a group of gossiping women. She demanded to know if any of them had ever actually spoken to Julian. Since they hadn't, she asked what gave them the right to slander him. She shooed them away, declaring that her diner was a clean place and wouldn't abide their filthy talk. A genuine smile touched Caleb's lips. Sarah saw him and waved him over, asking if he was buying pastries. He asked for one of her savory pies. As she boxed it up, she asked if Julian liked them. Caleb told her he loved them. Sarah beamed. She told Caleb not to be discouraged, that Julian was a good person, and one day everyone would see it. He got home to an empty house. He assumed Julian had found a new job. He was starting to prepare dinner when there was a frantic pounding at the gate. A neighbor was shouting his name, yelling that something had happened to Julian. The box of pastries fell from his hands, smashing on the floor. He and Mrs. Gable, of all people, rushed to the clinic. Julian was unconscious. He jumped into the rough surf off the pier to save some children who had fallen in. If one of the kids hadn't run for help, he would have drowned. His face was pale, his lips blue. The doctor was working on him, assuring Caleb he would be fine. Caleb gripped Julian's hand. It was ice cold. His own was no warmer. He whispered to him to wake up, that he'd bought him a pie. The doctor grumbled that his reputation was on the line. The boy would certainly wake up. A few minutes later, Julian's fingers twitched. He coughed up seawater and his eyes fluttered open. Caleb helped him sit up. Before he could embrace him, a loud, abrasive voice filled the room. A woman stormed in, demanding to know where her son was. She saw Julian and her face contorted in rage. She shrieked that he was a curse, that his bad luck had caused her son to fall in the water. Caleb stood, placing himself between her and the bed. He told her calmly that without Julian, she wouldn't have a son to worry about. A small boy ran out from an inner room and hugged the woman's legs, sobbing that the nice man had saved him. The woman stared, speechless. Caleb took a breath, his parents' words echoing in his mind. Anger solves nothing. He acknowledged that Julian had done things to survive, but asked the woman if she truly believed anyone would choose that life. He said the fault was not his alone, and the blame shouldn't be his alone to bear. His voice rose with passion as he asked her if she had never seen the darkness lurking behind the smiling faces of the town's respectable men. He declared that even if one is as low as dirt, a person with a conscience is worth more than a monster in a suit. As he spoke, the parents of the other rescued children arrived. He told the woman that cruel words can be more deadly than any weapon. The room fell silent. He sat by the bed, gently wiping Julian's face. Tears streamed from Julian's eyes, but he bit his lip, refusing to make a sound. A moment later, the silence was broken as the other two children ran to their parents. Caleb got a prescription from the doctor. As he was preparing to help Julian leave, he saw the three children standing solemnly by the bed. Together, they gave Julian a deep, formal bow of thanks. One of the little girls took Julian's hand and told him he was beautiful. Julian froze. Then, a raw, unrestrained sob broke from him, filling the small clinic. The next morning, the families of the children came to their house bearing gifts: food, fabrics, sewing supplies. The sun was bright that day, but it seemed to shine brightest on Julian. The town's gossip slowly began to change. Finally, Julian started working at the stall with Caleb. He was a natural. After only 2 weeks, his creations were as intricate and beautiful as Caleb's. The children adored him. He was gentle and never impatient with them. He was gentle, yes, but Caleb knew his teeth were still sharp. When Caleb had taught him how to use the Bowie knife for self-defense, Julian had mastered the disarming move on the 3rd try, leaving a bite mark on Caleb's shoulder that was still fading. Life found a peaceful rhythm. They saved enough money to buy Julian a new set of clothes. He looked radiant. When Julian was comfortable running the stall alone, Caleb would run errands. But one day he returned to find a man harassing Julian, his hands all over him. Caleb saw red. He grabbed a nearby broom and beat the man until he was begging for mercy. Julian looked shaken. He told Caleb it was the same man from the cannery district. A knot of dread tightened in Caleb's stomach. The next day, a wealthy, impeccably dressed man approached their stall. Caleb's lips thinned. It was Mr. Harrison, the most powerful and corrupt businessman in the county. Harrison made a show of buying 10 sculptures. His conversation laced with lewd innuendos directed at Julian. After paying, he lingered, a smug look on his face. He told Caleb it was a shame he worked so hard for so little. He offered, as a favor, to show him a faster way to make money. Caleb shielded Julian behind him and asked sarcastically if this method was legal. Harrison laughed. He offered Caleb $10,000 for one thing. His eyes kept flicking to Julian. He wanted Caleb to give him the beautiful young man to be his personal plaything. Caleb's nails dug into his palms. He asked Julian directly if he wanted to go with the man. Julian gripped Caleb's shirt and said, his voice ringing with conviction, that he would never leave him. Harrison, seeing Julian was lost to him, turned his persuasion on Caleb. He said Julian was used to this kind of work, that he was nothing more than a commodity. Why throw away a fortune for something so sullied? Caleb laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He pulled Julian into his arms. Because to me, he said, he is priceless. Harrison's face turned venomous. He stared at Caleb with pure hatred before storming away. That night, an unshakable feeling of dread settled over Caleb. He knew a man like Harrison wouldn't let it go. They decided it was best for Julian to lay low for a few days, perhaps helping out a friend who ran an embroidery shop. It was the right call. The next morning, as Caleb set up his stall, a squad of police cars screeched to a halt. Officers swarmed his setup, smashing his equipment, kicking over his cart. He fought back, but he was outnumbered. They subdued him, and 2 figures stepped out from behind the line of police. One was Harrison. The other was the county chief of police. Harrison thanked the chief for his help, promising a large donation. Caleb lunged, screaming, but was held back. The chief said nothing. Harrison kicked him. He sneered that he'd bought a sculpture from Caleb yesterday and had been sick all night. Caleb scoffed at the lie. He was arrested and thrown in a cell. Through the bars, he saw the chief walk away with a theatrical swish of his coat, a mockery of integrity. A man sidled up to Harrison, the same man from the cannery. He groveled, asking if he'd done well. Harrison tossed a roll of cash on the floor. The man scurried to pick it up. Harrison then turned to Caleb's cell, his smile obscene. He said he knew Caleb must be worried about his little beauty, and promised to take very good care of him. Caleb threw himself against the bars, but Harrison was already gone, his laughter echoing down the hall. Then the man from the cannery crouched down in front of the cell. He reveled in Caleb's fury, saying it was payback for interfering. He hummed a vulgar tune and sauntered away. The days in the cell were a dark, timeless blur. He tried to bribe the guards for news of Julian, but none would talk. He paced the cold concrete, a frantic energy burning through him, praying that Julian had found a safe place to hide, that he had run far away. To be dragged back into that life because of him, Caleb would rather have died fighting Harrison on the boardwalk. He expected to be locked away for weeks, but on the 5th night he was abruptly released. His first and only thought was Julian. He ran from the jail, sprinting through the darkened streets until he was stopped by the sound of music and fireworks. A lavish procession was making its way down the main street. He pushed through the crowd. Someone nearby gossiped that it was old Harrison, showing off his new prize, his 28th concubine, and a man no less. Caleb staggered back. The world tilted. His foot landed on someone's, but he barely registered their angry curse. The crowd surged forward as a limousine crawled past. He looked up. It was Julian, sitting in the back, his face beautiful and pale as a death mask. Their eyes locked across the sea of faces. In that instant, the world went silent. Julian's gaze was full of a love so profound it was painful. Then, slowly, he turned away. Just before he was out of sight, his lips formed 2 words: "Be safe." Later that night, Caleb scaled the wall of the Harrison estate. He knew the layout from years of bitter obsession. Inside, the grounds were vast and confusing. He didn't know where they would be keeping Julian. He had to stay calm, but Julian's sacrificial expression haunted him. He slipped into a guest house. It was dark, unadorned, not the right place. As he turned to leave, a woman's voice called out. He spun around, clamping a hand over her mouth before she could scream. He pleaded with her, explaining he was looking for the person Harrison had brought home that day. She nodded and he released her. She simply said she would take him. As they wound through the gardens, he asked why she was helping him. She was Harrison's 22nd concubine. She explained, sold to him by her own fiancé for $5,000. She led him to a brightly lit, ostentatiously decorated villa and pointed. This was it. He asked her to come with them to escape. She smiled a sad, grateful smile but shook her head. Her family was still in the city. She was trapped. He approached the villa. There were no guards. He pushed the door open. The room was dripping with wealth. He moved to an inner chamber. A figure in an ornate white tuxedo sat on the edge of the bed. Caleb approached slowly. The figure flinched at his footsteps. With a trembling hand, Caleb reached out and touched his shoulder. Julian looked up, his eyes wide and vacant. Caleb held out his hand and asked if he was ready to go home. They fled into the wilderness that bordered the city, crashing through the forest behind the estate until they reached the mountains. They found shelter in an abandoned ranger's cabin. Julian, exhausted, collapsed. He touched Caleb's face and smiled, saying if they were caught, they would just have to find each other in the next life. Caleb held his hand, vowing that wouldn't happen. Julian confessed that after his first captors were gone, he had simply wandered, selling himself to survive. He was used to being on the run. As long as he was with Caleb, he was okay. He fell asleep in Caleb's arms. After Julian was asleep, Caleb slipped back into the city. Harrison's estate was in chaos, security and police swarming the streets. He made his way to Harrison's private study. He found a safe full of documents detailing years of bribery, extortion, and murder. On the wall hung the Bowie knife, his family's knife, stolen all those years ago. He took it down, leaving his own worn utility knife in its place. Back at the cabin, he covered the sleeping Julian with his jacket. He knew they couldn't hide for long, so he wouldn't hide. He went to the edge of the forest and waited. The fight lasted all night. The blade, his father's blade, felt like an extension of his own arm. It sang as it cut through flesh. His parents had taught him restraint, but his parents were dead. This knife drank the blood of wicked men, and he would not deny it. If his parents had used it this way 15 years ago, his family might still be alive. By sunrise, he had driven Harrison himself to the edge of a cliff. The man looked at him as if he were a ghost. Caleb smiled, his voice a chilling imitation of a child's. "Uncle Harrison," he said, "do you recognize your nephew?" Harrison's legs gave out. He stammered that Caleb was supposed to be dead. Caleb's family had run a renowned self-defense academy. Harrison, consumed by lust for his mother, had framed his father for a crime he didn't commit. His mother, to save his father, had agreed to marry Harrison. On their wedding night, she used this very knife to take her own life. His father had hidden him before leading Harrison's men on a fatal chase. Caleb had been found and raised by a kind stranger, his identity a secret. Now, he told Harrison, he was here to settle the account. He drove the knife into the man's chest and kicked his body off the cliff. "Congratulations, Mr. Fletcher. Vengeance is served." The county chief of police stood there, clapping slowly. He told Caleb that killing Harrison meant he couldn't kill him as well. Caleb just looked at him. It was a package deal. The chief's men attacked. The Fletcher style was swift and deadly. Soon, only he and the chief remained. The chief didn't seem surprised. He knew this was the final step in Caleb's plan. But he said he wanted company in death. He whistled. A tactical team emerged from the woods, and they had a hostage. Julian. A blade was at his throat. The chief offered a trade. His life for Julian's. Julian screamed for Caleb to kill the corrupt official, that his own life didn't matter. He lunged forward, and a line of red appeared on his neck. "I'll do it," Caleb roared, his voice breaking. He demanded they release Julian first. The chief nodded. Julian walked slowly towards him, an officer shadowing his every step. Caleb knew it was a trap. "Julian, down," he yelled, and threw the Bowie knife at the officer. The man dodged, but Julian, anticipating the move, spun around, a small blade of his own appearing in his hand. He plunged it into the officer's neck. He was a natural at everything. Julian ran to his side. Caleb yelled to the remaining officers that their leader was a dead man, that they had no quarrel with him. The officers, leaderless and uncertain, retreated. The chief just laughed. Without another word, Caleb ended him and sent him over the cliff. Profound silence fell. Julian asked if it was over. Caleb pulled him into his arms and said yes. As Julian sobbed against his chest, asking for sugar sculptures and soup, Caleb's hand moved to the back of his neck. "First, we go home," he whispered, and struck a pressure point, knocking Julian unconscious. He hid him in the forest and returned to the cliff edge. Another group of men was waiting. At their head was a man with an air of immense authority. The man from the cannery was with him, pointing at Caleb, crying that he was a murderer. The authoritative man, a federal marshal, walked towards Caleb. He spoke his true name, Caleb Fletcher, the last of his line, a ghost. He said the facts were clear. Caleb had killed 2 corrupt and dangerous men. Did he deny it? Caleb raised the bloodied knife. He did not. The marshal nodded. A dead man should not remain among the living. He offered a final deal. If Caleb did what was necessary, his companion, Julian, would be considered an innocent party, and the entire case would be closed. His choice. Caleb slowly lowered the knife. It was the only way. Only in death could he guarantee Julian's safety. He had avenged his parents. He looked toward the forest, where Julian was hidden. "I'm sorry, my love." The promises of candy and soup would have to be broken. The knife clattered on the rock. He let his body fall backward into the abyss. The wind roared in his ears. In the blur of his final moments, he saw his parents. He had become the hero they had wanted him to be. And last, he saw Julian's face. His lips formed the words, though the wind stole them away. "Live well, my love."